Thank you very much, Mr. Bardizzi. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, that's right.
Great, thank you. And Professor Bradshaw, I appreciate you both being here. Now, Professor Bradshaw, you're currently, it sounds like a tenure-track professor in the U.S., is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, and this isn't bad or good or anything, I'm just wondering, have you lived in Canada or just stayed here during an election campaign or anything like that?
I have. Even though I live and work in the U.S., I'm actually Canadian, so...
Okay, perfect. Well, then that's good. So you'll be up to date, I'm sure, on a lot of Canadian political happenings. If you could name each of you, you all have your area of expertise, and sometimes we get very nuanced area of expertise, but I always like to ask this question. If you could change one thing that would inhibit misinformation, disinformation, you've talked a lot about social media, if you were responsible in this area for the Canadian government, what would you do first thing tomorrow? First, Professor Bradshaw.
Sure. I think I would be working around issues that have more to do with platform transparency. And I say this because I think, even especially with the Canadian context, we actually don't have a very good empirical understanding of how the activities that we see state actors engage in translate to changes in behavior, and particularly voting behavior. I think there are some real measurable consequences of these kinds of campaigns when they, for example, attack activists or female journalists, because there's clear kind of political suppression happening with very measurable consequences that appear in the literature. But getting somebody to change their mind or to alter their voting behavior, these kinds of things are very ingrained and embedded in our identities. And being able to actually get access to better data to study social media's immediate effect on those kinds of attitudinal changes over time, I think is really, really important to enhance a lot of the concerns raised by the field. We're starting to develop more empirics and evidence around this, but we need better access to data. And so that's where I would really start if I wanted to see changes. I unfortunately don't think that there is a silver bullet solution to mis and disinformation. There isn't something that we can immediately do to make this problem kind of go away, because it's kind of something that's really at the conflux of human behavior and the real technical design of platforms that might incentivize certain kinds of information to go viral over others, which again is also socially shaped by the people who are interacting with it. And so it's something that will need a lot more long-term attention to. So I think starting with the empirics and getting a better grounding and understanding of the causal mechanisms will be really, really important.
Sounds like we're looking at a 10 to 20 year project here based on the way you said it. Mr. Bardizzi, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I definitely endorse every single thing that Professor Bradshaw said, and to create that fact base for policymakers is really important. I will maybe answer with two quick points. One, a longer term project, but to have an olive system, education system response that brings in the media companies and those who are collectively responsible for creating a shared space for debate and factual presentation. And that, I believe, is a shared actually responsibility between educators and the media sector. And the second, I'll come back to, I think, the passage of the Online Harms Act, Bill C-63, would have a positive effect on some of these phenomena.
One thing that I'm struck by as a parliamentarian, and I came in partway through this study, but you talk about deepfakes, and I have my idea of what that is. One of the things that really gives me concern is just how easy it is to create such content, and secondarily, how easy it is to disseminate such content. given those two factors, are we really in a situation where rather than, as opposed to prevention, we're really looking at management?
I think yes, but I also think that in the context of, mis and disinformation and coordinated efforts to manipulate election processes, there's a much longer kill chain for, the technical kind of platform speak around an information operation. In order to get the deep fake on the platform and going viral, you have to be able to create a fake account. And in order to create the fake account, you have to deceive a lot of the internal systems within these platforms. And so I think even though there is an easier ability to kind of create and disseminate deep fake related content, if we're talking about it in the context of an information operation, we still need to consider the broader life cycle that these operations have to go through. And a lot of the mitigation measures have nothing really to do with the AI side of things. It still relies much more on, the old school kind of IP detection and all of the tricks that platforms play to figure out if this is a real person or a fake account.
Thank you.
So I'd like to refer to an ABC News article dated October 18, 2023. It says, U.S. says initial independent review shows no evidence of bomb strike on Gaza hospital. I want to read the first paragraph of this article. A day after the Hamas-led Gaza Health Ministry claimed Israel had attacked the Al-Ali Arab Hospital in Gaza City, saying some 500 Palestinians had been killed, Israeli and U.S. officials, explosive experts, and President Joe Biden said Wednesday, and available evidence shows the destruction was caused instead by a failed Palestinian terrorist rocket launch. I'm going to end the quote from that story there, but I would then like to refer to a tweet from 10/7/2023, and it's by Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister, posted on X, and it says, quote, bombing a hospital is an unthinkable act, and there's no doubt that doing so is absolutely illegal. Now, that was viewed 2.7 million times, and I want to draw to your attention the context that existed at the time, and that goes back to this ABC article's opening graph that talks about that initial claim. And that initial claim was that Israel had perpetrated an attack on a civilian site, killing 500 civilians, innocents, in that war. And that was reported by mainstream news outlets across the West, including here in Canada. And many, if not all, issued some form of correction. But the tweet that I read to you from Canada's foreign minister, I just read that and wrote it down in the last 5 minutes. So that tweet is still up, viewed 2.7 million times. How harmful is this? It's frankly, it's recklessness from a government-verified account. Now, on the platform X, there's different types of verifications, and one of them is from a government official or an elected official. This has the gray check mark. Talk about the disruption that foreign or hostile state actors they seek to create. And it's not necessarily to favor one political ideology or another. And I think, Professor Bradshaw, you talked about during a very contentious time in 2020 in the U.S., BLM riots, and the same hostile states were sponsoring or fomenting both supporters of BLM, but also supporters of Blue Lives Matter. So trying to create discord between two groups in a very tense situation, a tense time. So this example here, do you believe that this type of failure to act after a hot take, which can happen on social media, do you believe that it enables hostile foreign states to create the kind of division that, frankly, we've seen in Canada in the face of this this ongoing war in the Middle East? I'll start with you, Professor Bradshaw.
Yeah, so I don't remember the fact check story or anything like that. So I'm going to focus my response mainly on the role that I think influencers can play in the dissemination of mis and disinformation when we're looking at things like COVID misinformation, for example. It's really a small number of people who tend to generate the most engagement around like the conspiracy theories, and thinking about the role of people who have large audiences on social media. There's almost a greater incentive or a greater reason to, with great power comes great responsibility, kind of take more steps to ensure that fair and accurate and good information is going out to audiences. But platforms in particular have not traditionally taken that path. There have been a lot of, whistleblower documents that have shown specific kind of whitelists of accounts from people who are influencers who have large followings and can kind of get past a lot of the moderation systems because it generates engagement. And so for me, I think the problem is really there. And we should not be so worried about a Russian Twitter account that's not generating as much engagement and not reaching like mainstream public attention. But we should also be thinking more broadly about the role of influencers. And I also think that's why we see a lot of Russian information operations pivoting to hiring and co-opting local voices and people who already have audiences. If we're thinking about policy responses too, like generating that kind of trust and building a culture for influencers to do some defending of democracy could be a potential like positive route, but you also don't want to be paying them.